So now we're going to talk about the great bouncing ball experiment. Okay, a bouncing ball actually provides an excellent illustration of a nonlinear relationship. When you collect your data after this lab, you should get this nonlinear curve. And this is obviously going to be an example of what we've been talking about these days. It's an example of exponential decay. So your graph should look something like this when you're finished. Now to do this, you're going to need some help. So either a parent or a guardian or a sibling, someone needs to help you out with this because it's too tricky to do with one person. Usually in class, we do it with 2 or 3. So you're going to need some help from the people you're living with, which would be great. So one person, either, again, your folks, your guardian or siblings, need to be the ball holder. So they just step on like a step ladder or something safe, and they need to hold the basketball at a certain height above the ground. Now this has to be the same height every time they hold it, and we're going to call this height initial. That's the initial height. So you want to use, I just use a basketball. I mean, you can use, something that bounces, like a volleyball is fine, or a super ball. Soccer balls don't bounce that well. So it has to be something, relatively, bouncy, I guess. So they're going to hold it like this, and then what's going to happen is they're going to drop it. And you probably have a sense, that when the ball bounces, it's going to sort of create this pattern on the ground. So what you're going to do is you are going to grab the ball at the height of what's called the rebound height. So for example, someone's going to hold the ball here. They're going to let it go. It's going to drop and hit the ground, and it's going to come up, and you are going to catch it right here. And we're going to call that height 1. Okay, that's the first rebound height. So it's going to bounce, and then you're going to catch it, and then you're going to measure it. So get a measuring tape out, have a measuring tape with you, and you're probably going to go to the top of the ball. Okay? So someone holds it, it drops, you catch it, and you measure the height of it, just holding the ball in one hand and the measuring tape in the other. And then you give the ball back and they try it again, a second time. So they drop it a second time, you measure it, you throw the ball back, and they drop it a third time. So you do it 3 times. And you're going to have 3 measurements for height 1, and then you want to actually find the average height. Okay, so for the average, of course, you add up all 3, so 1 plus 2 plus 3, whatever your results are, and then you obviously just divide by 3, and that gives you your average height 1. Okay, and then you give the ball back, and it's the same initial height. They drop it, but you let it bounce once, and then you let it bounce twice, a second time, and you catch it down here. And that's going to be called the height 2. And that's going to be the top of the ball. So after the first bounce, the ball, you catch it, it's right there, whatever. The second time it bounces, you catch it in the air, you're holding it there. And then it's dropped, it's bounced twice, you measure it, you throw it back, bounce twice, you measure it, do it again, bounces twice, you measure it. Same thing, you do it 3 times. 3 times with that, you find the average and so on. And then you keep going. So you go from that same initial height again, and then you let it bounce once, twice, 3 times. And you get that height there. We call that height 3. And then you repeat it, and so on. And, go as far as you can. Obviously, after a little bit, it's going to be hard to get it. That's why it's so important to have a little bit of higher initial height. Because if you're too low initially, it's going to be too hard at the end here. So make sure you're up on, something reasonable, okay? You don't have to go like the roof of your shed or anything. But a few feet off the ground. And make sure it's the same height every time. And let it bounce, and you get those measurements for each one. Okay, so here's what the table is going to look like. So now your initial height is here. You don't have to do your initial height 3 times. So say you're holding it up in the air, and say you can do it in centimeters or meters or feet or whatever, inches. You're probably going to have, I guess, a measuring tape. So if you did it, and maybe you had it, 10 feet is probably pretty high, 120 inches. Maybe you're up around, 80 inches. It's probably too low. Anyway, say around 100 inches or whatever. So your initial height is 100 inches off the ground. And then after 1 bounce, it's going to be less, obviously. So maybe the first time it bounces back up to 85. Then the second time it's like 82. And the third time it's 79 or whatever it is. Okay, you add those 3 up, and that gives you your average. And then you let it bounce 2 times, and this time maybe it's, it's going to be less, of course. Maybe it's 61 and 62 and whatever, 58. There's some error there. You add those 3 up, that gives you that. And then after your third bounce, obviously it's going to be lower. So it's, 44, 45, 41, whatever it is. add those up, and that gives you your average there, and so on. You keep going. I said 6. Do your best. Get down as far as you can. I said about 6. Okay. These are just some example measurements. Don't worry about that. That's fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to graph the height after each bounce versus the average number of trials. So those are the two columns we're going to check. So in our graph, we're going to have average height up on this side. Now I just chose 300 centimeters. Maybe that was my initial height. So this will be different for you. So maybe you're, again, if you're in centimeters, maybe you're 250 or maybe you're 200 or maybe you're 100 inches, whatever your initial height is. So don't worry about that, okay? And then you'll have a number of bounces down here, probably around 6 would be it. And then this would be the graph that you make. Okay, once you finish that, I do have this assignment posted. You can print it off and complete it on the actual worksheet itself. All right, good luck, have fun.